It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, spot on, and it's the start of our arena events. And as this is the steam rally, as it has been for 60 years now, this is the first steam parade of the afternoon, just to show you off. We've got about, possibly just over 40 steam engines of one sort or another on the site at the moment. And yesterday, I think we had them all in here. I'm very lucky this afternoon because I'm not suffering with a bit of a bad throat, but I've got an excellent co-commentator in Drive Steady and an equally excellent co-commentator is Web Streeter, who is a great, there's me here and I've always been for the last goodness knows how many years, an enthusiast, but that's it. I've owned 1 or 2 machines, but never a steam engine, or just anything I've learned, I've forgotten. But seriously though, Fred is a qualified boilermaker, welder, riveter, you name it. Several of these engines here, you probably tell you only is too modest, here because of the work that he's done on them. So over to you, Fred, for the first one. Drop you right in it.
Thank you very much, David. Your words are too kind. You're quite right. I've probably worked on most of the steam engines here. My mechanical knowledge is better than my historical knowledge, so I'll do my best. The first engine coming round is a Wallace & Stevens advanced steamroller called Lucy. Wallace's tried to improve the designs of steamrollers by making this machine called the Advance as an advancement. It was very quick at reversing, so going from forwards to backwards. As you can imagine, if you're laying tarmac, the last thing you want to do is stop a steamroller because you create a lump or a ridge. Wallace's didn't put a flywheel on their engine, so you'll notice there's no big wheel on the top that's going round, and it's just giving you a demonstration of forwards and reverse without stopping there. This engine's also recently been fitted with rubber tyres in more modern times. It makes it a lot more comfortable to ride on the road, driving to and from steam rallies. But of course, when it was originally used for rolling, the steel rolls, it had been steel or iron, are very slippery on the road, so the rubber is a vast improvement.
Yeah, it's ideal for rally. And I think I might say that Stuart Gaines, who owns that particular engine, was one of the first in the area to fit the rubber tyres, and everybody that was a sort of purist said, oh no, it shouldn't do that, it alters the originality. Well, yes it does, but it makes it right for the job it's doing now, which is rally. Anyway, you can't really see their rubber tyres. They're lovely. And I just mentioned that Stuart is the Secretary, the National Tax Engine Trust Secretary for the Steam Apprentice Scheme. And yesterday we had a couple of people that wanted to join that, which enables you to learn all about engines and end up driving one. If you want to join that or know more about the apprentice scheme, then go and see Stuart Gaines on Lucy. That's all I'll say.
Well, we're getting quite a lot of collection of steam engines in the arena. It's hard to keep up with the commentary with all of them. The engine pulling up next to Lucy is another steamroller that came round, the green one. It's made by Ailing and Porter. It is an 8-ton piston valve version. For the more mechanical binding of it, most steam engines, well, they've all got a cylinder block on the top of the boiler barrel, but how the steam gets into the piston is either by a sliding flat valve or by a round piston valve, like a top reel, like a bobbin. This was an idea that agents had to try and improve its efficiency on water and coal. The engine's called Ebenezer, and it was very renowned for building. He did a lot of work on Wembley Stadium, am I correct, David?
Yeah, it goes right back to the 1920s when it was owned by a firm of contractors called Coffin and Wakelin, who were Jewish faith, and they called it Ebenezer because in the Old Testament, Prophet Ebenezer, I don't know all about it, but he had a thing called the Ebenezer Stone. And since that was Rolling Stones hardcore, the roads around the new Wembley Arena, they thought that was a good name for the road.
The engine that's just pulled pulled up alongside Ebenezer. It's a rather beautiful Fowler general purpose engine. He's just doing a little manoeuvre there. You can see the flywheel going round and the smoke coming out of the chimney. John Fowler was particularly renowned for building ploughing engines, but they also turned out large road locomotives and general purpose engines such as this. This engine is extremely lucky to be fitted with rubber tyres, spring suspension and 3 speeds, which kind of makes it the GTI model of the steam engine world. You might think that 20 miles an hour in your car is pretty slow, but this engine will probably do 15 or 20 miles an hour in top gear, and I can assure you when you're on one of these great 15-ton machines bombing along the road, it's quite exhilarating.
The engine pulling in next to that now is, I think we've got them in the right order, is a barrel traction engine. Quite powerful one, what's called an 8 9 horsepower, but it's called Saturn, and it was built in 1891. The notes I've got here say that it worked all in Norfolk all its life, which is not at all unusual because general purpose engines are very often used with threshing drums, saw bench work, farm work generally. But this one, it says including with crab nets on the Norfolk beaches. Well, I did inquire about that from the owner, and it was later on in its life, and they had crab nets that they laid out right into the shallows. Crabs got in there, of course, and instead of going in there with your bucket and spade, they literally hurled the nets in, which of course against the beach and everything, it's quite a job. It was more than you could do physically, and you ended up with a whole load of crabs for the cook pot. Anyway, Steve and James Bronster, really lovely couple of boats, own it, and they live in Crowborough in East Sussex.
Saturn is one of the engines that I've recently been working on at my workshop. We've just fitted it with a new back axle, and when we dismantled it, as David was saying, it used to use the winch a lot. We found that the winch drum bearings had over 1/4 of an inch of wear in them. They used to rattle around and jangle about, and also because it was near the seaside, the amount of rust that was on the bottom of the axle was just incredible. It looked like something from the bottom of the pier, all pitted and horrible. I don't really know how it works. So we managed to manufacture a brand new axle out of a piece of steel that's about 6 foot long and 6 inches in diameter. And we put keyways in it, and we re-bushed the winch drum, and we put it all back together about 4 weeks ago. And they drove it here all the way from my workshop in Ashington, all on the road under its own steam.
Yeah, it's quite a run that. Can be very enjoyable, but today when I drove along one, it steered and on the road many years ago with truss locomotives. It was okay, but it was getting a bit too busy and people are too impatient. But yeah, they made it, that's the main thing. Barrel steamroller called Daffodil. That's, we've got so many coming in. That's the maroon one with the canopy that says Carlion at St Day, Cornwall. It was built in 1924 and new to the firm whose name appears on the canopy. It went to Dingles, who were Cornwall's great road rolling contractors, not just to Cornwall, but they subcontracted right across the country. Their engines were to be seen as far north as the Scottish borders. It's now owned by Nigel Isaac, who comes from Salisbury in Wiltshire, and he's owned it since 1970. Jupiter's just going past. No, you don't look up at the sky because it's all cloudy. No, Jupiter I'm talking about is the Sentinel steam engine. But I know that Fred want to maybe have a few words about Pensioner first, but one of the trust engines that's going through a Tasker's engine.
Yes, the little Tasker there, you'll see it's got a special front roll on it, unlike any normal steamrollers. This was an experiment that Taskers were trying to improve the steering and manoeuvrability of the front of the engine. And instead of having 2 large rollers, it's got 5 little cast rollers. This makes it a lot easier to turn because you're not trying to turn 2 solid breaking lumps. This engine is also a convertible engine. You'll notice on the smoke box in front of the chimney is a kind of a flange with bolts in it, and you can undo this and take the rollers off, and you can fit front wheels to it and turn it into a small traction engine or a steam tractor. So you could use this engine as 2 purposes, dual purpose, rolling roads or rolling anything, or using it as haulage, or like a general traction engine in the wood sawing, timber extraction. So effectively, it was a lot cheaper than buying 2 engines. You could just change the parts.
Yeah, which of course was a heavy job, but in those days, the workshops had the equipment for it and everything else. I don't think anybody bothered with hard hats and things, just got on with it. Jupiter, as I was about to say, is something totally different to the others. It's a vertical boarded engine, which basically all the engines coming in here, the boilers are horizontal, a bit like your Thomas the Tank engine or Flying Scotsman or any railway locomotive. The Sentinels of Shrewsbury built vertical engines, which meant that you had more space at the back, weren't taken up with the boiler for loads and that, but this one's rather special because there was only about just over half a dozen made, and they were made for a special purpose, which was timber haulage. And because of that, they actually had two steam engines, one of which drove the lorry, which is what it is along the road, and the other one, when it got to the logging site, was to reach the trees out of the forest, which is why those two things sticking out the back, which we generally refer to as spade lugs, they can be let down into the ground, so that when the very powerful steam winch is working, pulling a log weighing probably several tons, definitely several tons, across very possibly muddy ground. Otherwise, what would happen, the winch would work, and instead of the tree coming back to the lorry would go back to the tree. But we've used it up here for that very purpose. When we've had an oak tree come down, it's a perfectly useful engine, as they say.
And following that engine up, you'll see a very rusty-looking Wallace and Stevens traction engine. Now, you may think to yourself that nothing has ever been done to this engine, no work's been carried out, it looks very honest and in very original condition. But I can tell you this was another one we did some work on. It's recently received a new firebox and a new front tube plate. The whole thing's been apart, so the boiler now has many new parts in it, and it's like brand new. But I always say a really good restoration is when nobody knows I've been there, and this is a great example of it. This one's owned by the Coppard family, and it's kept in its original kind of working clothes, as I said. It's really, really nice to see that, because it's very easy to over-restore something, I think, sometimes. Lots of paint, lots of shiny brass. I mean, it all has its place, but it's extremely hard to make an engine look original. So it takes 100 years to make it look like that. So the idea of keeping it in that condition is wonderful.
Yeah, there's a big old story about that. The brothers that bought it and never used it, just fortunately filled up the firebox and the smoke box and things with old engine oil, which stopped it going rusty. Then put a cover over it and left it. And there was precious little. It had all the boiler had been standing there for 40 years. It was perfectly sound. Now, going in there between that, the second row now, is Wilbur. We're very welcome back to Wilbur, which was built in 1917. One of a pair. The other one was called Orville. No, not after the cartoon character, after the Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville, who were the first people to fly the Atlantic in a thing called an aeroplane. Unfortunately, Orville was cut up to scrap, but it has double speed winch gear. Oh, it hasn't, because they've just done a lot of work on that, a massive amount of work. Bob Watts has got it. It used to be owned by the Burgess family, had to have a new firebox, which is a major job, and then lots of other things. It's always something else to do, and it's only just made it here. It was finished yesterday, but the winch gear for the ploughing is not been fitted underneath. So somebody said to me yesterday, it's the GT version of a ploughing engine. I think Jeff's up there at the moment. I was hoping that we'd see Brian Thompson on it today, but he used to drive it a lot. Anyway, the next one is also a ploughing engine, also owned by Bob Watts. And it's another BB engine built in 1914. Sold to after the First World War to the Steam Ploughing Company in Essex. And then he spent most of his life in Kent until 2017 when Bob bought it and restored it in his own workshop. The idea with ploughing engine, when they both got a winch, is that one stands at one end of the field and the other to the other. Pulls the plough between them, which might sound very cumbersome, but when you plough six furrows and up to 20 acres in a day on good soil in the East Country in East Anglia, then it beats the horses, I'm afraid, beats the old horse and one-man operation by a mile. Do you want to have a word of fabulous endurance for the Langley family?
Yes, Endurance, another beautiful product from John Fowler here, and extremely well turned out. This engine is owned by the Langley family, I think for about 3 generations. They've had it for a long, long time. When I first bought my own steamroller, I used to keep it in their yard. So Polly, my own steam engine, used to be stablemates with Endurance. It's just recently undergone a lot of work over the last maybe 5 years. I was involved helping out with it. They did a new boiler barrel, new firebox. Most of these engines have had all this sort of stuff done by now. And Ian's just finished it off in a beautiful, loving way. In the complete opposite to what I was saying about things that I like things looking original, I also like things that can beautifully be restored. And this is a prime example of a traction engine, how it would have left the works. So if you'd have bought this back in, I think it's 1895, this engine, probably the second oldest one here. If you'd have bought that back in 1895, that's how it would have turned up to your farm, your yard. What a beautiful piece of English engineering.
Credit to the Langley family, who owned it for years. Absolutely. Bob Langley is the senior Mr. Langley, and I've been fortunate that he's been made for a long time, and he's just a brilliant guy. And so indeed is his son Ian, who's driving it. Anyway, we've got a couple of Marshalls coming in. The first one was built in 1909, so pretty much one of the oldest ones here. As a threshing engine to threshing the tractors. Restored in 2023. Michael Patterson's got it now. It lives in. Sorry, that was I mixed up. Sorry, it was built for Kendall's threshing contractor, requisitioned by the World War I by the Army. So many were, because we needed the engines that could thresh the wheat and the corn to send across by sea to all the lovely horses. Remember war horses that were working abroad in fields that were not able to be harvested because they were full of shell holes. Anyway, great amount of work it did for that. But it is now in the ownership of the Kemp family from Crowborough, who bought it in 2024. Sorry, Daisy's just going past. Yeah, well, it's not Daisy, it's Colin who's driving. But the crew, this is the first time this engine has been out at any rally. Since about 1970s, I would think, when Claude bought it. And he bought it straight out of the scrapyard at Newhaven, where it was about to be cut up, having worked all his life for the West Sussex County Council. And he paid, I believe, the previous sale of 70 quid, which was about its scrap value at the time. I brought it back and did rally it for a while, but then it needed work, and he said, Ford said, it just needs new tubes. And they got in the firebox to fit the tubes, and they found the firebox was leaking very badly, and that's another major job. Ford had quite a few other engines to do at the time, so it languished in the sheds, and has only just come out. It passed its steam test yesterday morning. So this is very much a debut engine. And Becky and her daughter who were sitting there, they worked, and so did a few others, but they were really responsible, the ladies in the team, for an awful lot of work on that engine.
Now back to Fowler products again. I seem to be on Fowler today. You'll see this great big road here. Actually, there's a pair of them coming round now. Two great big Fowler road locomotives. These engines, the first one's Nightmare, and the second one is called the Great North. Both of these engines are haulage engines designed for doing heavy moving of heavy loads. And the second one, the Great North, is a crane engine as well. If you look on the front of it, you'll see it's got a kind of a winch drum, and lower down on the perch bracket there's some brackets, and you can fix a jib, a large jib to this, and use it as a crane. So very versatile engine indeed. The first one that came in is called Nightmare. I asked Roy, who owns it, he says, I said, why did you call it Nightmare? And he said, well, everything I do on it is always a nightmare. Which they probably are, I can imagine. It's all big and heavy and stuff. But this is the first engine Nightmare. It's turned out in its original kind of working clothes again. Despite having lots of work done to it, they've maintained original paint and an original look for it, a working day look, which I really like. And the second one, the Great North, that's turned out pretty well again, how it would have been when it was new, probably 10 years old, I expect. That second engine belongs to the Searle family. They've got a large collection of haulage engines from Horsham. They regularly used to use them at the Great Dorset Steam Fair when that was going up and down the big hill demonstrating how a haulage engine should be used.
And undoubtedly they will be doing so at the Weald of Kent, I've moved it. Sorry, the High Weald Rally in Sussex, which is just up the road, and that's in a couple of weeks' time, and that is described by Mr. Bamsey and Ian Langley, who've organised it, to be a working rally. So in other words, instead of just standing in a row and then trundling round the ring, which is fine, but they've all got jobs to do, and you can see they'll be doing heavy haulage demonstrations with that very engine. Now, as I always say here, we've got an imposter when it's a steam engine, not a steam engine, or when it's a diesel engine. And this one going round is made by Aveling Porter. It was a precursor of all the many later steam engines, and this goes right back to, I think, the late 1920s. And basically what it is a whopping great big single engine, diesel-powered stationary engine, which they slung between the frames there. It was designed for that. But the starting was the thing. So what they came up with, just imagine this big cylinder that's going around with the flywheel, bump, bump, bump every minute. That needs a lot of starting. You can't do it with a crank handle. But what they devised was a system. You'll see it has not a boiler, but a cylinder along the top in front of the man stand there, which is full of compressed air at about 200 pounds per square inch. And the compressed air is what starts the piston in the morning. One of our volunteers here at Tinker's Park has worked again tirelessly on that engine. We couldn't do it without the volunteers, and yeah, it's pretty good. But if you're behind it on the going to the Festival of Transport, its top speed is about 2 miles an hour.
And back to me with Fowler. Another Fowler, that's unbelievable. This time it's showing up in a roller form. So we've had traction engines, we've had road locomotives, and now we've got a John Fowler steamroller. This one is called Hermes, and it belongs to Jonathan Bartle's family. He's had this engine for probably, 40, 45 years, I suppose.
Yeah.
Used it, travelled it everywhere by road. I mean, I remember this engine when I was young, and I used to admire it, look at it. Again, a very well turned out steam engine.
Yep, and then we've got another engine which has recently come into the rally field. Greg Luck owns it. He's our section leader for the steam section here at Tinker's Park. We've got it divided up: steam engines, tractors, railway, etc., etc. We have a team leader for the volunteers, and that's his unenviable task at the moment. But he built this one himself. He rebuilt it. I watched him do it. It's basically nearly all apart from the boiler. You don't do the boiler, so you have to get a specialist qualified boiler engineer, because you're working at 180 pounds per square inch. If anything really went badly wrong with that, which I can assure you won't, it's got a up-to-date certificate, an explosion would be literally deadly. But he's done a wonderful job on that. Completely new boiler and loads of other work. It was a C-type, which was quite common. Aveling Porter built a lot of those. In fact, Aveling and Porter were the most prolific builders on steam engines, not steam engines, road rollers. They started it way back. Aveling were down there near Rochester, Kentish product, and normally when I'm sitting here waffling on, it's one Aveling and Porter after another. See, we've got a lovely example in front, haven't we, Fred? But Fred's had all the barrels. He's got an Aveling and Porter to talk about now. Because there's normally more of them than anything else. I just say, I usually sit here and say, what's another green engine? It's very unfair.
We seem to be being run into over here, look. It's a popular hobby to try and hit the commentators by the seams of it.
Yes, I think he's a cheap, I hate to say it, Ian Langley, but he's actually got a little bit closer, so we won't tempt anybody to outdo him, for sure. Because I do want to go home afterwards. Well, it all belongs to Ray, so we don't want it. Ray won't ever come again.
Yeah, we haven't had Danny Lou yet.
No, we've got that to come. You'll see all right. Now, the Warburton on this one, a lovely Aveling called Hengist, after the two Viking kings of Kent called Hengist and Horsa. They were brothers. True story. And again, you know, the restoration work that's done on this one is absolutely superb. And several of these engines, Fred's done the proper work, making them run, and I just come along with my recording equipment and a pen and write a story about them. And there was quite a story behind Hengist. We haven't got time for all that. Blackpool Corporation. corporation. Look at this one. This is which one's this? I've got it. Sorry, I know the name. It's just gone out me as everything does these days. Andrea, isn't it? Was new to Samuel and Son in Blackpool, and then went to Blackpool Corporation as their number 6. The number's on the side there. Number 6, Blackpool Corporation. No, it didn't go in the ballroom for Strictly Come Dancing or anything like that. And it didn't attempt to climb the Blackpool Tower, something like that. It just made the road, the seafront. You go down to see the lights and all the other sites. It was more than likely that this very engine would have rolled that road, because it was built in 1930. It was built in 1930. So it's towards the end of when they were building steam engines. It went into preservation in 1965. Which was the early years of preservation. It served a long time with Blackpool. Mark Harris and Tim Simmons come from Sittingbourne in Kent. And another green engine.
For those of you who are mechanically minded and are at the top end of the arena here by the fun fair, you'll have probably noticed that when Hengist and maybe some of the ploughing engines went round, the front wheels kind of shudder and shunt, and you'll see that they've ripped the grass up. You might be wondering why this does it on some engines and not on others. Again, it's a mechanical detail. Not all of these steam engines were built with a differential. So how a steamroller and a ploughing engine work, they have drive pins. You'll see the pin often hanging on the back if it's not in the wheel, or if you look at the wheel hub, you'll see like an elliptical shape with a hole for a pin to go in. This is how the wheels drive. Well, of course, when they were on iron wheels and they were slip-sliding about, you'd want both pins in. It helps grip, it helps you stop, it helps you start. But when you're going around